Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, all you weirdos. Jim here, and I'm going to continue my reviews of the new Ghost Machine books. You know, clicks be damned, I say. And this time I'm going to be reviewing Redcoat. This is the second of the three reviews I'll be doing. Obviously, I already did Geiger, doing Redcoat now, and then I will finish up with Rook Exodus. And what I do like about these books already is, first off, people seem excited about them, and I like when people get excited about any type of comics, but it's also that play of which one is your favorite. Even before reading them, there were a lot of people saying, oh my God, like they want to read the Rook Exodus because Jason Fabok's their favorite artist. Or they already were a fan of Geiger, so they want to get more Geiger. Or like me, wanting this Redcoat because I am a bit of a history buff. And what that means is I like to read about history in the new. That's the type of history buff that I'm talking about, right? And it's funny because that's kind of what old Benjamin Franklin was into as well, and he's in this book. So it all comes full circle. But I really, really did like the setup for this Redcoat book. It's Redcoat #1, written by Jeff Johns with art by Brian Hitch. You have inks by Brian Hitch and Andrew Curry, Brad Anderson on colors, letters by Rob Lee. And by the end of this, when I give you my score, I'm bound to mention that this is kind of just setup. You don't really get to a story. It's more about setting up the world, and it's intriguing, and it's cool. And it goes with that idea of history mixed with the supernatural. And anytime you throw the Founding Fathers in with anything, including so many stories with Illuminati and supernatural, I'm always there. I always like that, and that's what this is. So it kind of is, ringing my bell a bit, right? I should hit that bell if I can find it. There it is. It's ringing my bell. But we start off in 1775, and we have the ride of Paul Revere. He is riding through town yelling, the Redcoats are coming, the Redcoats are coming, arm ye self. He ends up getting stopped by the Redcoats. I mean, one of the things that's a problem, if you're yelling the Redcoats are coming and they're already there, you might be in trouble. And they make that joke. Well, we're already here. And they start beating the crap out of Paul Revere. He's having problems right now. And it's funny when you're reading this. First off, it's a comic, so you don't know. Maybe Jeff Johns is going to play it a little different, but you're hoping that you kind of know that Paul Revere ends up working this out. You just have to find out why. And if I remember right, I think it might have been spelled out in the Beastie Boys song, but I'm not sure. But what happens is, all of a sudden, these fireflies come. And one of the first persons to actually realize this looks like a mixture of Tim Roth and Pete Townsend. So I'm in with that as well. But he ends up seeing this. Hey, look, what's up with these fireflies? They start swarming. They start attacking. They start going in these guys' mouths. And then all of a sudden, they become pretty much ghost riders. All their heads just become flaming skulls and they die. And Paul Revere's like, what the heck just happened? And John Hancock's there. And it's like, get up, Paul. You have to finish up your ride. This is the magic with a K, of the Founding Fathers. We can't actually, secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without some supernatural mix, right? And that's cool. And it's really cool. Brad Anderson's colors just pop in this whole play, especially when these guys are attacked by these fireflies. And even then, you end up where Paul Revere's like, well, what did those fireflies do? I mean, how did they do that? And he's like, oh, no, it wasn't the fireflies. That was me. Like, he really, John Hancock is a guy who, first off, likes to write real fancy, but he also likes to take credit where credit's due. And he says, that was me. That's our magic. And then he says, you see, God doesn't need to bless America, Paul. We're going to. And so you end up where he kind of clears the whole scene, and there's a lot of magic involved, and it's really neat. It's a really cool cold open. Now, you then jump, and at this point, again, thinking, okay, what's this book about? Are we going to follow Paul Revere? Are we going to go with John Hancock and see the Founding Fathers? That'd be cool. But instead, we then jump a bit ahead, about a year, and end up following what is our main character, who is a Redcoat, is a Brit who is in Trenton and is kind of deserting, running through the woods, being chased down, and he ends up finally being able to escape, but hides in a church. He ends up being able to hide himself in a church, until he starts hearing some noise, and he looks down, and all of a sudden you just have a crazy supernatural mumbo jumbo nonsense crazy ritual going on right there in that church. And this is not any sort of religion that I'm familiar with. There's a lot of symbolism. You even have the whole Illuminati type deal, the Masons, all this involved robes, hoods, and a guy on pretty much a dais there. There's a guy on an altar. We find out that this is in fact Benjamin Franklin, and they are trying to do this famous ritual that is going to give Benjamin Franklin some sort of power, but he has to be worthy. He thinks he is, but he also says, if I'm not, then whatever, I might as well die. But so all this is going on. You wonder, okay, how does this work out with this British soldier? And his name is Simon Pure. He even makes the joke, I'm not that pure, but that's my name. What happens is he just kind of falls. It's his klutziness that ends up changing what this history is, because instead of Benjamin Franklin then getting hit by this spell, this whole summoning, you end up getting the Simon. He gets hit, which obviously would piss off everybody, including Benjamin Franklin, but he gets hit and he ends up in a really cool page. Again, the colors are great, but he ends up getting hit and he explains it that it feels like he has a hand on his shoulder. They're kind of judging him, and then boom, he gets thrown out of here. And we're not really sure exactly if it worked. I mean, at the point where Benjamin Franklin is even saying, hey, I think I'm worthy, and everybody should know a little bit about Benjamin Franklin, that if you're going to be worthy, whatever it might be, like, okay, there's one guy, but what about this crazy just Simon Pure? We don't know him. So is he worthy? Did it work? You end up having a giant explosion of light that pretty much rips apart this church. But then Simon wakes up. He wakes up on that altar, and you then start jumping through time. You end up going to 1892, a big jump forward. We're going to kind of show his progression here, because what happened with the spell, it made him immortal. Now, he can die, but he's immortal in the thing that he resurrects. He comes back. So he has died a bunch of times, it seems. He has gone through, since 1776 here, when he ends up getting hit. He's gone through a lot of adventures. He's gone through things, but it isn't like he is a rich guy. He still seems to be wearing the same exact clothes. They're immortal as well. But also he's kind of been on the run, it seems. He keeps killing people. And you have a funny play, and this is really good. And it's very cinematic in my mind, where Jeff Johns shows these guys busting in a door at this hotel or inn he's staying at. And they're like, we're going to take your life because you ended up killing. And then he's like, let me guess. And you go back 1790, you have somebody who's going to kill him because you killed my brother. 1827, you killed my father. 1892, that we're at now, you killed my favorite cousin. That's pretty funny. And it's funny because he's like, favorite cousin? Oh my God, like it's down to that? Favorite cousin? He's like, let me guess. It was that guy's name, Charlie? Oh, no, Billy, the bulb. Now, maybe it was, Obadiah. Like, he can't remember. He's immortal, and he's been doing this, so he ends up, but it's a cool way to show that he keeps ending up in trouble. Whatever happens, he's always at the other end of a gun, somebody trying to kill him, and he ends up, trying to fight his way past these guys. He jumps out the window, and again, almost like now this is 1892, but he's still in his Redcoat deal. It does look like a historical back in the day version of maybe the beginning of Trade Spotting. That whole thing where you could even imagine that you would have the freeze frame and then he'd go. Pretty cool. But he says, I just end up getting in trouble a lot. And he's running through town, and the art's great. You have Brian Hitch doing some pretty cool art as he's running around like a back in the day Ferris Bueller even. As he's running, pardon me, lovely frock, my lady. As he's running down the road, you do end up seeing a young kid recognize him speaking in German and is very interested at who this guy is. I mean, he's more interested than even we would be at this point because we really don't know him. But he ends up and he says, hey, I'm immortal. Starts to fill us in on things. Yeah, it seems pretty cool. You don't die. And he says, I've been shot, burned, drowned, stabbed, trampled, blown up, which is mostly my fault. but I don't die. So that's pretty cool. But there is some drawbacks to being immortal. And one of them is he always has to keep eating. He says he always feels famished. And he says there might be a price to this immortality as well, because I'm not really gaining any money. Like usually when you see these sort of things, the people are smart enough that they end up, gathering up some money, whatever. He's broke. He's flat broke. He says he gets in trouble. He gets in all of these adventures, but he seems to be okay with it. But he goes in to duck into another inn, like a bar, to hide from these guys. And he ends up, oh, Betsy. And you get the idea that it's Betsy Ross, and she's immortal as well. You see that she has gone through the different times with him as well. So, and every so often she's slapping him. In that, like every 40 years or so, it looks like she has to meet up with him and give him a slap in the face and call him scoundrel, liar, thief. And now he's here again, and he owes money. That's the other price of immortality. If you end up immortal and you have somebody else that's immortal that runs a bar, you tend to, have a tab that might end up, getting pretty big, which he does. And he says, oh, I've changed. He's like, yeah, I've heard that before. No, I'm a better man. I'm going to pay. Yeah, I've heard that before. What she has done now, you kind of get the idea that she's kind of bad, that she has sold him out. She actually has sold them out. Now, as this is going on, it's pretty funny. She's talking to Simon as she gets this lantern, lights it, takes it over to the window, places it. You don't even realize. You just think like, oh, maybe it's getting darker and she's there. That's the signal to those guys that he's there. So they know that Simon is there and come there and pretty much kill him. But, I mean, obviously, Betsy here, she knows what's what and might just be doing this. It could be a cool little dupe of, okay, I'll sell Simon up, but I know he's not really going to die. So I'll get the money. They think he's dead, and then he's there. So I think that could be part of it, or just that she hates his guts and doesn't care. But she obviously knows that he is immortal as well. But these guys come in, and the guys have also set up that they are going to pay for any damages during this fight. While this is going on, nobody seems that concerned. Betsy's there serving up beers, even saying to guys, hey, it's on the house. They're actually them. They're paying for all this. And you do have Simon he gets run through with knives, gets shot a couple times. He's dead. And it's a cool thing to show in this first issue what that means, how that works and whatnot, because he goes black. He says at points he sees a couple little things before he resurrects, things with his dad, things, like that. And then his ears pop and boom, there he is in his coffin. He says it's usually a 24-hour span, but sometimes it's longer, sometimes less. But this time it's about 24 hours. And that means that he was buried before him resurrecting. But he said, I've done it before. I kind of am pretty much an expert at digging out of my own grave. He said at one point, the first time he woke up in a coffin, he ended up dying again and again. And so he learned how to do it. But as he's trying to get out, he's actually freed anyway by that young kid who we saw earlier, the German kid, and he's still speaking German. Eventually, he will speak English and say that he learned it in a couple days. He said that English was not so easy. It took him 3 days to learn it. And you end up where Simon's like, 3 days? I mean, what's going on with you? And he introduces himself, and we're going to get that connection sort of thing where it's Albert Einstein. He introduces himself as Albert Einstein, and he needs Simon. He has been following Simon. He recognizes what he is and said that he's in need of a wizard, or the wizard. That is what he thinks is Simon. So with that, he's, taking him out. He's getting out of this grave. He's like, I think you might got some things wrong, whatnot. And then boom, all of a sudden you have from off panel, looks like somebody else already dug the bastard up. And we see that it is the same type of hooded figures, the same group that was doing the ritual on Benjamin Franklin about 100 so years before this. So they are obviously after Simon. We get the idea that they've been after him because of him and his power and what he kind of took for them. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. Again, all set up. There's not a lot of, okay, this story's this story's that. Even some of the things I'm saying, I'm kind of making up in my head of what I think it might be, but I think it's kind of goes with that. But you end up having kind of a funny thing. And this book does have a bit of a sense of humor that I like. At this point, it says next month, a genius and an idiot, and then says, guess who's who above. And they're pointing at Simon and Albert Einstein. So there's the joke. Even at the beginning, if you didn't notice, on the credits page, it has Redcoat, a mortal mercenary kind of a tool. So it's kind of fun. It is fun. And again, I really like the concept of supernatural mixed with history. I kind of wish they stayed back maybe in the 1776 era, that sort of thing, not moving into the 19th century. I'd rather stay in the 18th, but that's what they're doing. But it's kind of a cool thing to run into Albert Einstein, which was spoiled in the solicit. The solicit also mentioned Annie Oakley and things like that. So it does seem like it will be a book that he'll end up almost like a Forrest Gump, running into a lot of people. But it's cool that he's with a young Albert Einstein. So we'll see how that plays out. But overall, I'm going to give it an 8.8, a little higher than what I gave Geiger in that review. I really do like this. I am really excited about it. I'm really intrigued. But again, I said I'd mention it at the beginning. The idea that it's just setup. It's just setting things up. I'm not even sure that I like Simon yet. That he is only pretty much just running. And then, he's a scoundrel. People like scoundrels, like a Han Solo, right? I do. But I need more. I need more before I really sit there and say, oh, this is awesome. This is great. But it's a really good start and has me intrigued. So I'm going to go 8.8. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks of it. The art's great. Like I said, the colors are really, really good as well. And it feels big and cool. So this is what I've liked about the first two books, Geiger and this. I'm into them. I'm glad that we have more options of good books because I think these are quality. But let me know in the comments what you think, and I will talk to you all later.
Weird science is the revolution.